Yes, my name is Runde ROV. I'm a marine biologist educated at the University of Bergen. I've been working for Runde Research since 2022. And I have a background within mapping of marine habitats and nature types, especially vulnerable ones. For instance, coral reefs and eelgrass meadows. And I also do a lot of varied work at Runde Research. We do hydrographic, chemical and biological environmental assessments, and also monitor plankton blooms and a lot of different research going on here. To us, it's important to know where we find corals and other nature types so that you can take them into account when you do management of the oceans. They are very important promoters of biodiversity. They have these complex three-dimensional structures where you can find different species hiding within. These structures baffles the currents and makes nutrients get trapped within the structures. So they're really, really important, and thus it's as important to know where they are to be able to avoid them. The corals are also very vulnerable because they only grow about 2 to 10 millimeters a year in Norwegian fjords. If you kind of break off or if you impact them in any way and they die, if you have a 4-meter high coral reef that may be thousands of years old. Also the top layer that's really alive, so if you kill the top layer or the outermost layer, you kind of kill the rest of the coral reef as well. Most people know that there are coral reefs in the tropics. These ones have a symbiosis, a cooperation with an algae that gives the corals nutrients. It's called zooxanthella, and it's an algae. So it's doing photosynthesis. And in Norway, you find the corals on deeper waters. In Trondheimsfjorden, you can actually find them at about 38 meters, but mostly you need to be at 130 meters and down. These does not have a symbiosis with algae. The corals, they are colony animals. They consist of many small polyps. So you can kind of imagine a coral polyp being a stinging jellyfish upside down, using its tentacles to collect food. Corals are actually in the same phylum as jellyfish. So they are nettle animals or cnidarians. And in Norway, we probably have the biggest occurrences of cold water coral reefs of the species Desmophyllum patusum, formerly known as Lophelia patusa. We really have a big commitment to taking care of these corals. To find the corals we have found this far with the Blueye, we have first off started with where it's been possible to use the marine base maps that we have to identify areas where we can expect the corals to occur. So here in Sunnmøre, we have these marine base maps that are really detailed. So we find structures on the seafloor that looks like this is a place where you can probably find corals. And also, if we look for hard bottom corals, we can just exclude all the soft bottom areas and go for the hard seafloor areas. And then we have used the Blueye to get down to about 230 meters depth and then done transects up to the sea's surface. Along these transects, we have been looking for the corals. In addition to corals, we also, of course, look at other important habitats and nature types and look at sponges and a lot of very interesting and special species that we have in our beautiful fjords. We've also been to Sunnmøre to research areas or to map areas with what we call cauliflower coral in Norway, blomkålkoral, which divers have been tipping about. They go down and kind of dive along ridges and look for cauliflower corals, but they can only be down at a limited amount of time. And that's when the Blueye comes in to be able to look at bigger areas for a longer amount of time. We've been collecting data on the occurrence of cold water corals to look at which species we find in the habitats the corals make and at what depths we can find the corals. And by using the Blueye ROV, we got to go out and actually confirm there was a lot of corals distributed in the whole fjord. If you look for occurrences of corals, at least at 250 meters and above, the Blueye can do the job quite cheaply. I had never driven it before, and it was easy to set up and also simple to drive. The auto heading that you can use to keep the direction working really well, and especially when going up like steep hills, that's working So yeah, we've been happy with how the ROV has been performing. We hope to do more mapping of nature, both directly for vulnerable habitats, but also to monitor environmental conditions and how the distribution of ordinary species also change on shallow and deep waters. We also hope to do more exposure research on vulnerable nature, like more experimental research, and monitor the response of nature on human influence in a changing climate. That's really something I want to dive into.